Okay, welcome to LinkedIn Live Office Hours. A little technical difficulty today, apologize for that. We are remote today in the Bordeaux region of France. We are up in the what's called the left bank of the Bordeaux region. We're at a lovely Chateau Lynn Baget today, and I'm with my old friend and colleague, former colleague, Doug Ladd. We're here inspecting the wine region, obviously tasting and taking everything in that Bordeaux has to offer. But we also wanted to talk to you today about this issue of international marketing. And this seemed like a great opportunity just to put down some live stream info for you and put it out and talk about this very important issue. I'm going to bring Doug in right now. And so there he is. Okay, the man, the myth, the legend. Doug, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Drew. Thank
Good.
you.
And again, sorry everybody about the technical troubles. You just never know what you're going to get when you are remote with live stream connections and all the other technical issues. But let me just start with this question, Doug. What is international marketing? How does that differ from what you would call regular or domestic marketing? What's the big deal? I mean, isn't it the same after all?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's one that people raise quite often. We tend to think of marketing as just being the four P's, right? I've got my product, I've got my price, I've got my place, I've got my promotion.
Yeah.
What is different on the international side is we put another set of acronyms on top of that you'll hear referred to in different ways, but the one that makes the most sense to me is one that's called PESTLE. And what that stands for is political, which is the P, economic, S for society, T for technology, C for competitive, and L, which is the legal component.
Okay.
And what needs to happen in international marketing is you've got to take all of those 6 factors into consideration as well.
Okay.
And so we can talk about each of those, or we can just talk about them in broad brushes, whichever you'd prefer.
Yeah, I think of it this way. Let's say we have one of our viewers today is a regular marketer, a line marketer, sort of managing some domestic product within their country. Could be the US, could be India, could be any part of Europe. We get participants from all over the world. And now your company has decided to go overseas. And hey, they're going to ask you to take the global marketing responsibility. So how does this acronym help them? And then talk about the 4 Ps. What are the big things to consider, the potential pitfalls that moving from a domestic scenario to a global scenario needs to be considered?
Yeah, good question, and it's again one that I think a lot of people run into, and so I would start that by saying that one of the initial things to think about is, so what is my strategy going to be? Am I going to try to be a transnational brand, meaning a brand that can transcend all of the differences around the world? Do I want to be what is known as an international brand, where I might have subtle differences either in my product or my positioning based upon the country that I'm in? So one of the first things to think about really is strategy. What do I want to be? And what does my brand lend itself to be? You'll see some companies that will take individual country approaches. Their promotional messaging and their positioning is different country to country. Then you'll see those that say, we are all things to all people. For example, Rolex, right? The Rolex watch brand is the same, whether we're talking about Thailand, India, or the UK. But big companies like Procter & Gamble sometimes will personalize their brands to the individual country. And so that is step number 1, is to look at, well, what is my strategic approach going to be? Then the next step is to go through those 6 phases or 6 levels of analysis that I discussed. and to look at things like political. Is there a different political climate in this new market or this international market compared to my home market? Today, and where our world is today, is a great example of where the political environment plays a very big role in thinking about how am I going to market, right? If you happen to be a country that is in Russia today, let's say that you're a country that's not headquartered in Russia, but you are in Russia, you are feeling a lot of pressure from others about should you be exiting Russia, given the situation that's happening right there. And the reality is this happens all of the time. It happens in the US based upon our election cycle, as well as in other countries. Political is always an important component that needs to be factored in and thought about when you're thinking about how am I going to create the best environment for my brand.
You know, we're here in Bordeaux, in a region that sells their products globally. And it's a very, very popular region, one of the central locations of wine production, certainly not the only. Think about something like supply chain. You have, let's say, a chateau that was just selling locally to restaurants and to hotels, but now they want to sell in other countries, perhaps in Asia, perhaps in the US. Talk about supply chain. How dramatic can those changes be when all of a sudden you want to start thinking about overseas sales?
Yeah, it's a significant issue. It factors into the politics play a role in there because
Yep.
you could have laws and regulations that might limit or might facilitate you entering into new product. Economics play a big role in supply chain
Sure.
because you can have issues such as, like we experience here in France, the exchange rate between the euro and the US dollar is different
Oh, yeah.
right now. So I might build my entire plan that says, I want to have a wine from the Medoc region that should be in the 30 euro price range. Well, now I have to think about, well, what is the exchange rate? And does
Yeah.
that push me out of my target market in a certain country
Yeah.
because of that exchange rate for the euro? Then when you think about the, societal doesn't necessarily play a giant role in something like supply chain, other than it can play a role in where do people tend to get your product.
Sure.
So do I typically shop for my wines in big box stores, or is this the type of thing where in my society, we go to a very small shop, people that I trust? That's the type of thing that you need to factor in. The T stands for technological.
Yep.
That can be very big as well, because that can play a role in terms of how your product moves around a country. Wines, again, for an example, you tend not to ship wines during hot seasons or into hot climates. So do you have refrigerated trucking available, for example, to allow your product to get to its end customer? Competitive plays a role in your supply chain because there are some markets where the competitors, previous competitors, have done a great job at locking up the supply chain. And you might need to
Yeah.
go develop your own distribution
Wow.
systems in order to get to your end market. And then finally, the legal. Legal can also play a very big
Sure.
role relative to laws and the implications that can happen there. So that no matter which one we take, if we take supply chain, if we take pricing, if we take product formulation, pestle analysis
Yeah.
filters through all of those. And it's you have to be very thoughtful when you're going after this. It can't just be, oh, I'm going to take my product and start selling it
Yeah.
out of France and into the U.S.
I think that's the key, is just because it's marketing, it sounds like, hey, it's just another region of, I'm going to sell my products like I do everywhere else. It's not quite that simple. Doug, you have a course here. You're an author here on LinkedIn Learning, as I am, and you have a course in international marketing. Can you tell us a little bit about what's covered in that course?
Yes, and again, I think that LinkedIn Learning is just such a great resource
Sure.
for professionals as well as students to get exposed to these different ideas and to be able to hear from people who have been around the block and they have this experience to be able to relate to them hey, here are some of the things to watch out for. So in this particular course around, it's in the Fundamentals of Marketing course, and it's specifically about international marketing. I go through not only this pestle analysis and how to do a pestle analysis, but I also then talk about the implications that might have on each of the 4 Ps.
Great.
And then there are also some work products in there, some examples and case studies that people can go through just to get a little bit more experience with how to use the tools. At the end, this is about getting you exposed to just some of the different things to think about. We also then cover some of those strategic questions of what is the level of nationality or internationality that you want to take, and how might that impact your product and your brand.
Yeah, I can imagine where different markets might be easier than others to get into. And a good marketer is going to understand that and use this kind of framework. Doug, thanks very much. That's all for today. I wanted to give people a feel for what this course was all about and what this issue is all about. I'm going to bring up this. Just want to remind you that in a future broadcast, we'll be talking about another particular topic of marketing, in this case, pricing, and some tips to help you price your products and services, whether you're in the consumer markets, B2C or B2B. I hope you can join me for that. And that is it from Bordeaux, France, up here with our great tour guide. We were very fortunate to link up with Decanter Tours, and they have done a great job of getting us around the region and seeing all this has to offer, both not just in the wine production, but really the business aspects and, of course, the tasting. So thank you to Veronica and Mary and the team from Decanter Tours for giving us a great experience here in Bordeaux. That is it. Thank you very much.